हेलो। आ रहा है ना? Madam, shall we start?
Wait, madam. Still to join. There are 4 to 5 minutes still.
Okay, madam, I will wait.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Mike, your mic is off.
Uh, Good morning, ma'am. How are you today?
Fine, fine. We are just waiting for the participants to be added, a few, and then we'll start.
Sure.
Right, thank you. You can share your PPT, sir, in the meanwhile.
Pardon?
PPT, sir, your PPT.
Yeah, I can share.
Oh, thank you.
Good morning, all. A welcome on behalf of AGPIT Institute of Technology and Institute Innovation Council. I, Professor Mambal, welcome all of you to the inaugural function of Impact Lecture Series. Chief guest of today's program, Mr. Nitin Katke, dignitaries from various institute, faculties, and dear students. Once again, I welcome for this wonderful and informative session. The research found that there is a powerful relationship between the technology advancement and entrepreneurship. Is an organization as newer technology enhance the flow of creative ideas in the organization. The research found it important to ensure participation of employees for effective idea generation. Through the research, it has been evident that proper technology advancement not only increases the efficiency but also promotes the idea of entrepreneurship. In an organization where the employees provide creative ideas to enhance business operation. In this regard, organization has also required to implement the participative tool so that the employees can share their creative ideas with organization to make the operation better. Different tools like communication, user experience, online selling, and development of updated technologies seem to have an impact on entrepreneurship development. Now, I request Professor Sakre Ma'am, Chairman of Institute Innovation Council, to put her opinion.
Thank you, madam. Um, Good morning, all. Respected principal, sir, our chief guest, Katke, sir. We warmly welcome you for this Impact Lecture Series, Part 2. We have this Institute of Innovation Council established in 2020, and we have been working for this development of students' creative ideas for making them get into the motion of make startups and thinking of their own like entrepreneurship ecosystem. We are into, and we have several activities conducted. And as a part of this, another step was the Impact Lecture Series, and we were honored also to have this opportunity to conduct the Impact Lecture Series. The Impact Lecture Series, the aim of this is simply to have this like regularly the students, if they are made to get into this thought of creativity, then only they will be getting into this flow of prototype or startup designing. What happens is when we are doing this as a regular, can say exercise or a practice, then only it becomes used to, it becomes a hobby for the student to get into this the thought process or making a critical thing. These are not any different terms that are coming from different universe or something. They are something that arise around us only. We are having all these things around us. We have the problems and the solution as well. So how the student should get into this problem realization and get into the solution for the same, all these things we have to make them through some technical sessions. All these things come to their mind. How, and even if, like, suppose out of 20 to 30 students, suppose even a single person comes out with an idea creativity, it becomes a great success for the institute as well as the whole making of this program. Once it was told by one of our professors that phone pay was made by their student. So it was, they were so proud to say this. So even we feel that once we should have such an opportunity, and then we should be very happy to announce that yes, this is one thing which has become so renowned, and we are a part of it. So even a single trigger will make a big change. That is the aim of the Impact Lecture Series, and even the Ministry of Education. What they said is, if we are trying to have this at our institute will also cater to the needs of the nearby rural places. So rural places probably they don't have the interactions, or they can say like the resources what we have at our city places. So when we are mentoring these low, we can say resources colleges, we have to also be a part of this Impact Lecture Series, and accordingly with this we can say Impact Lecture Series, we can make a great contribution to the startup and the students there studying who have less facilities. They are not having nothing, but they are having something, but it is less to have one startup. So all in all, we are there to be with those students to get their ideas done. We have the prototype labs in our college as well, and people like you, experts and all, help us to do our aim successfully done. So welcome, sir, for the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, it's a great pleasure to introduce today's chief guest, Mr. Nitin Katke, sir. Sir has founder, director of Sinrage Engineering Services. He is a co-founder industrialrider.com. Sir has having 13 years of experience across automotive, oil and gas home appliances. He has completed his MBA from General Management from National University of Singapore and MTech in Mechanical Engineering from IIT Delhi. Sir has 3 patents and 6 international publications on electromechanical subsystems. Headed has team size of 40 plus engineers as an assistant general manager at Finite Technologies, leading engineering service firm at Pune. Sir has geographies worked in India, Singapore, USA, and UAE. He has also certified as a competent communicator and competent leader by Toastmaster International. With this brief introduction, now I request our Honorable Principal Sir, Dr. S.A. Sir, to guide us on this occasion.
Good morning to all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Good morning. So today's resource person, Mr. Nitin Katke from Synergy Limited, Pune, and the other resource person, Professor Kiran Talele Associate Professor, SPIT Mumbai. So this is the second part of the Impact Lecture Series. It is sponsored by AICTE and ISTE, and it is organized by our AGPIT Institute of Technology. I welcome the resource persons as well as all the staff and students and the other faculties from other institutes, okay, for this Impact Series lecture, and I'm sure that everybody will benefit from this lecture. So a lot of information will be shared by the renowned resource persons from industry, and I'm sure that everybody will get benefit. From the for the information of the today's resource persons, let me introduce our institute. This is AGPIT Institute of Technology, was founded under the Shanti Education Society by our Honorable Chairman Sri G.Patil sir. It is its daily activities are looked after by our Honorable Secretary Sri S.A. Patil sir. Apart from AGPIT Institute of Technology, we have got one more AGPIT Polytechnic Institute in the same campus. We have got around 15 acres campus nearby, just on the outskirts of the Solapur city. And we are running 4 UG courses, that is in mechanical engineering, civil engineering, electronics and telecommunication engineering, and a computer engineering, and 1 PG program in mechanical manufacturing process engineering. Our institute is affiliated to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Technological University, Lonere. It's a state technical university. Our institute is NAC accredited, and shortly we'll be going for the NB accreditation also. So almost more than 12 batches have passed out, and almost more than 2,000 engineers are, you can say, working in the various fields in and in India as well as abroad also. Many of our students, they are now at various positions in various industries, and our recruiters are mostly from this very renowned institute industries like TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Tata, okay, and so on. And I'm sure that our institute and our management is catering to these students from all over, okay, from the Solapur district mostly, and from the rural areas. So once again, I welcome all the resource persons, and I'm sure that all the students will get benefited from these lectures. I'm also very eager to listen to these resource persons. So once again, I welcome all the resource persons, and I'm sure that all the students, they will get benefited from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Mr. Nitin Katke, sir, to guide all of us.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you, Principal sir. It's always been an honor to be here and speak about the little things that I know. Thank you to the elite faculty and the curious minds who are wanting to listen to the talk that I'm going to deliver today. So the topic that I've chosen today is startup areas for budding engineers. As you all know, we all are sitting in a room, virtual rooms rather, and then we are talking about startups. The startup starts with an idea. So each one of us has got ideas. Day in, day out, we come across our ideas. So some of us have ideas like, I mean, on all subjects, and it's very difficult to choose which idea should you pursue next. So Steve Jobs once quoted, ideas are actually worth nothing. So they're just a multiplier, and execution is worth millions. So the point here is, if you have an idea, open it to the world, get opinion from the experts, seek mentorship from people, and take that idea forward and develop it into a fruitful company. So the point again is, ideas in themselves mean nothing, but the execution part, or converting that into a startup, making it reach to the people and benefiting the people, is what is the more important part. My introduction has already been done, so I'll skip this slide. So a bit about my firm Synergy. So Synergy is basically into engineering services, as well as we do management consulting for a lot of startups and solving different startup problems, starting from pitch deck to bottleneck resolution, whatever issues the startups or companies are facing. So we pitch in and understand their problems and consult them and resolve their issues. So apart from management consulting and engineering services, we are also involved into a bit of IT services as well as training. Before we take a deep dive into the different areas of startups, I have put forth a few slides on Startup 101, that is the basics of the startups. So we'll keep on hearing certain terms related to startups. So what exactly they mean, and how are we how is it different from the conventional business wisdom that we keep on hearing? So before we get into that again, the basics of the startup, here is a quick question for everyone who is listening, and I'm sure if there is a chat window, I would like to seek an answer for this question. The question is very simple, as you can read it on the screen as well. How much money does Vedantu is a edtech startup, as we know, spend to make a sale of rupees 10,000? So for example, if they're having a class which is having a fees of 10,000 rupees, the student has to pay this amount to them. So how much money would Vedantu be spending to make this sale, or in terms of financials, the revenue of 10,000? So I would like to see if there is, are we going to get some closer answers to what the real numbers are? So if you can, is there a chat box? Okay, I see. I don't see any response. So, anyways, I'll answer the question. So, the answer with typical business wisdom would be somewhere around lesser than 10,000. However, when we are talking in terms of startup, we'll have to put different lenses and watch the entire business or the business model with a different perspective. The answer to this simple question is 80,000. So Vedantu actually spends 80,000 rupees to make a sale of 10,000. So that's a bit of puzzling. But if you see the financials, as you can see in the orange bars, so this is the financials for financial year 21, that is closing of 21. So you can see the operating revenue that they have got is around under like 100 CR, whereas their expenses themselves have been around 750 CR. So this is almost 8-time multiple. So a startup like Vedantu, they're spending 8 times more to get a revenue of 1/8. So this is a bit puzzling to the normal minds, but only till you understand the basics of what's really happening in the startup world, and how is it even reasonable. So though Vedantu's numbers are on a higher side, even if you look at other startups in edtech world, they are also quite similar. So this is the expense to revenue ratio. That means the expense, so the numbers are more than 1, so that means the expense is higher. So the expense to revenue ratio, for Vedantu it is 7.86, whereas for Unacademy it is 5. So the same way, Unacademy is spending 5 rupees, say 5 rupees to get 1 rupee as revenue. And of course, the money that is coming for all the spending is coming from the fundings that they have received. So how does it even make sense from a business perspective? The answer is simple. It is based on the future cash flows that these companies will be generating revenue. So right now, capturing the market share is more important than the current profits. So that's the only reason why you see more spending and gathering more and more market share and acquiring more and more customers. So the customer acquisition costs are higher and marketing costs are higher. And so is, I mean, the expected lifetime value for these customers, acquired customers, is high. So you can see all the unicorns in the edtech startup arena have been put here, and the numbers are more or less like greater than 1. That means they are spending more. The exception being the recent unicorn PhysicsWallah. So what really defines a startup? How is it different from the conventional businesses? So the conventional businesses, if you see, the most important factor that distinguishes is the scalability. So the conventional businesses aren't scalable to the level that the startups are. Of course, the startup by definition means they should be solving a problem, a real world problem that exists. And then they are creating an ecosystem, entire ecosystem to solve this problem and to scale it up. Of course, innovation is one of the key drivers. Without innovation, not in just terms of product, but also the process, or it could also mean disrupting the value chain or the key drivers which from one end to the other end. So disrupting these to deliver innovative product. Also, at the same time, funding is an important aspect of startups, which is usually not required for the conventional businesses. So despite such good numbers and fairy tales, there are many startups, almost like 60–70% startups fail. And then there are reasons for that. And then those reasons are industry proven reasons. Most important, I have listed here some 12 reasons, but the top 3 reasons that would go is the market. You're not addressing the market. Many times what happens is entrepreneurs or students, they come up with solutions and then they want to push those solutions without seeking whether there is a need of that solution to the market, whether there is a problem that exists to resolve that, which will resolve this problem. So if there is any, so there should be, the approach should be problem first and then the solution, not the other way around. The other reason that why startups fail is they run out of cash. As we have seen in case of Vedantu, they are spending so much. So the moment they don't get the next level of funding, they would burn out and they would easily run out of cash, and that will lead to the closure of the company itself. And not having the right team. Team is one of the key factors which is identified in many researches, which is a key driver of success for the startups. So this is the crux or the summary of the earlier slide. Someone at Idea Lab, they did a research of 200 successful startups, successful as well as failed startups, and they have arrived at what are the key factors which decide the success of a startup. So the timing is most important as per this research. Timing in the sense that, for example, we had a period of the pandemic, Corona. This was the right time for the edtech startups to come up and leverage on the given opportunity. At the same time, if you look at the other successful startups, you will see that the timing is a crucial factor. Team and execution. Startups is all about execution. So idea in itself will not have much weightage, 5% I would say. And then rest of the things are how you execute. The idea would be simple. I have to take one person from place A to place B. A rickshawala does it, a taxiwala does it. However, someone has to go and execute the bigger picture of Ola or Uber or Grab. So that is the execution part, and the team. Who are the people who are you going to work with? How is your chemistry within the team? So that is an important part. So idea, of course, when you say idea, it also means the feasibility of the idea, apart from the timing and the execution. Feasibility of the idea as well as the potential the idea has. Business model, of course, it comes with, it's related more to the markets. How are we going to make the money, where the cash flow is going to happen from? That's there. And funding. So timely funding is very much required. So if the funding cycles are missed, then there is a big chance of burnout. Key elements for success of a startup. The 5 factors that we discussed earlier are put more into actionable items. That is, the first one should be, there should be a problem that you should be solving for the customers, and then there should be accordingly a value proposition that you're creating for the customers. Of course, developing an innovative product. When you say innovative, it doesn't mean it has to be totally different, but what the customer needs, as well as what the customer may need, and he or she may not tell you, but you have to anticipate that a bit of futuristic view. So that comes under innovation. Likewise, identifying your customers. So there is a concept called as customer persona. So you have to identify who exactly your customers are, what they do day in, day out, and what exactly are their needs. So what is the market identification, the particular segment of the market that you want to target, who are the players in that market, and how you compete with them. So all these things are key factors. A bigger chunk of that is how you are going to monetize the thing. Monetize is a word that we frequently hear in this startup world. Reason being, people come up with great ideas, but then when you put these ideas onto paper, it's difficult to, many times it's difficult, where is the money going to come from, or why would the customer pay you for certain thing. So that is the business model and the financial plan. That means how is your P&L going to look like, the profit and loss statement going to look like. So that is an important aspect. And most important of these is the teams. So whether are you going ahead with the team A, which means the best of team, or are you going to accommodate with the not so good, or anyone is on the team is okay for you. So that decides the success for a startup. How should we approach the problem? So it should be, as I said, it should be from a problem towards the solution. As you can see, this is a value proposition canvas. This was done for Grab. Grab is something similar to Uber. You start with what are the jobs to be done for the customers, what are the pain points, what are the gains they expect, and then accordingly you create a product and services which would be pain reliever or gain creators for them. So this entire thing is called as value proposition canvas, and this should be the approach for starting with your idea. So right now, if you have multiple ideas, the best thing is to keep on fine-tuning them and ultimately arrive at 1, 2, 3 ideas, and then go on creating the business models as well as the value propositions, discuss with many people so that you can fine-tune and arrive at the exact area of the startup that you want to choose and work on. This is coming from the Bain & Company. This is called as the value creation model. Bain & Company is a big name in consulting. So they have proposed, they have these 2 models of value creation, B2B as well as B2C. So according to them, value can be created for the customers in 30 different ways. So they have put them under 4 buckets, that is functional, emotional, life-changing, and social impact. So whenever you are having an idea or you're pursuing your idea, and you have decided on who your target customers are, it's very important that you choose on what exactly is the value that you are offering to them. Are you giving them, are you relieving them their anxiety, or are you, it is going to help them save time or to make money, or likewise. So it's very important that the value creation or the value offering for the customers should be clearly highlighted. Of course, the next step once you have an idea is MVP. Some of these slides might have been from my earlier session that I have done, but in the interest of all, I have put it again. Maybe it's just a couple of minutes of repeat, but it's in the interest of all, so that the flow is maintained, and then ultimately we'll arrive at the areas and how the things are moving or developing in the global as well as the Indian ecosystem, how the funding is happening, which startups are which areas are having more weightage. So that will come at a later stage in the presentation. So meanwhile, we'll go through like a few basic concepts of the startup. So MVP is basically a minimum viable product, a product that is just good enough to launch, or to go to the customers and then take their feedback, so that we can establish a loop of the product updation and the continuous feedback. And then later on, moving from MVP to product market fit. So MVP will help us in minimizing errors, as well as collecting a feedback from the customers, and also at the same time approaching the investors and testing the market. So this is a typical cycle for product development, the stages. So once you have a quick proto of the idea, you develop a MVP, and then once you have a MVP, you move on towards testing the market and check actually whether your product and the market, the targeted market, is it a fit. For example, if you are into a D2C business, you have developed a product, say a smartwatch, okay? And then you have a certain feature which maybe a boat doesn't have, or the other companies in the market don't have, but you think it is a great idea. Then you have to go and test the particular customers. Say, for example, you could be having school children who would be wearing these watches when they go to school. So that product market fit is basically coming from the response from the initial or the early stage customers. Once that product market fit is achieved, then it's the time to scale or grow. Equally important is what is your go-to-market strategy. So this is again one of the terms in the startup world. So go-to-market is, in layman's terms, there is a market existing. How are you going to approach the customers? So there could be multiple ways. You're going through social media, or maybe your email campaigning, or making a lot of cold calls and converting that cold calls into sales and business. So it's very important to have a go-to-market strategy right from the start, because it helps develop investor confidence, as well as it also helps in getting that initial few set of customers. We might have you might have heard of the term value chain. So basically, what value chain means is you have a business or a startup. So what exactly is coming in the system, and what exactly is going out, and how much is the margin that you're going to make. So for example, your business is again the same business, D2C. So in D2C, you're having inbound logistics, and then you're doing some operations, developing a smartwatch, and then making it reach to the customers. And then the next departments would be going for sales, and then the after sales and the service. So each of these factors or pillars, as we call, is very much important. And then the reason why it's so important is there are multiple startups in same area, right? So what happens is, we apparently from outside world, we think they are doing the same things. However, to get a competitive advantage, many companies they tweak this value chain in between. Say, for example, there would be a firm, say, who is delivering this product right from their warehouses directly to you. Someone may have their dark stores nearby, and they may be giving it from there. Someone may be having other kind of operational model. So basically, the entire thing, starting from how your product is created and how it is delivered to the customer. So if we can make certain changes to this entire value chain, it will in itself will be an innovation if it affects, if it helps you in saving the cost as well as time. So it's also important to have to understand how are you positioned in terms of the competition. This is directly coming from Airbnb's pitch deck. So Airbnb, when they pitched to their their investors, they had this slide, and then At that time, they were comparing themselves with the existing competitions, say hotels or the Craigslist, right? So how are you different from the current customers? It's very much important to know for yourself, as well as to let know to your investors, as well as customers and all the stakeholders. Equally important is again revenue model. What is the kind of revenue model that you're going to choose? So typically, if you're a SaaS-based company, then so you may go opt naturally for a subscription-based model, or you may have a freemium model where initially you will have some free access to the customers, and then later on for premium services, you'll charge them a premium, like what Twitter does. Or you may keep it totally free and you may have advertisement over it. So there are multiple such models, but there should be absolute clarity on what revenue model are you going to choose and how are you going to monetize the customers who are going to visit you. Market size is important from an investor's perspective. So if you have a brilliant idea, if you have a brilliant team, however, if you do not have a big market, so what happens is your initial attraction may be good, however, you do not have enough room to expand. So you may be choosing a market or an area, and then starting from that area, how are you going to move on to different other areas? One good example would be Amazon. They started with books, and then later on they expanded to what they are right now. They do everything. So eventually, startups they diverge. They move on to from the focus that they had, but that becomes a business need. At the start, when you are pitching to your investors or when you are starting your company, it is important that you should have a focus, and the focus for that market should be clearly known. What is, say for example, if there is a school or colleges market, if I'm starting a company for internship. So for internship, it's very clear how many colleges we have in India, and then out of that, how many students would be looking out for internships. So would the students be willing to pay for that? And if they are going to pay, how much are they going to pay? Even if I count like 3,000, so I can easily multiply those numbers and find out how big the India's market is, and then that becomes my TAM, that is the total addressable market. Typically, people start with TAM and then they move on to the SAM or SOM. So how much of the market I'm going to capture, that will become SOM, and then SAM is like, it includes you and your competitors. So once you have all these information with you, like how a startup operates, now it's important to choose what area you're going to work on. So there are many areas, and we know, like day in, day out, you just add tech to something, and then that becomes an area, AgTech or EdTech, or now FamTech or FinTech. There are many such areas. Also, what pedigree you're bringing. So basically, if you have a background in certain area, that gives you a initial competitive advantage, that if you grow in that area, there is a less chance that you may fail. So also keep that in mind, and not just choosing the areas where the funding is happening more. So because where the funding is happening more, of course, more people are also rushing there. And then the people, say for example, FinTech is high in demand as of now. But if everyone rushes to FinTech, there would be people who are not doing what the core person, say for example, someone from IoT background. So a person with IoT background can have he can deliver an impact which may not be delivered in FinTech. So of course, choosing an area of work, you need to spend some time and then arrive at different factors and screen them to choose an area. So starting with idea generation, of course, you may be having multiple ideas in different areas. So maybe the good way is put them in an Excel, or talk to few people and see how the response is. Whenever you're talking to people, it need not be you need to disclose the complete idea. What's more important is what is the problem that you're solving, and this is the solution, and how you're going to monetize. These three things should be more than enough for the initial level of discussion. And that will help you in the screening of the ideas. And once a few set of ideas are narrowed on, developing a concept, understanding the market, developing again proto, and going to the market. At the initial stages, it's quite possible that you may get a negative response, but that's okay. It should be taken more as a feedback from the market. So coming to the area, so after having an overview of the typical concepts in startup, let's deep dive into what are the startup areas. So there is a big list of the startup areas. So these areas, each day in, day out, new areas are also coming. So for example, AR, VR, or Meta these days, they are providing new and new opportunities. However, like I have put forth a good enough list, though it is not completely exhaustive list. However, like some areas like AgTech or EdTech, they are very much in demand right now. So AI, ML, it will be, of course, everyone knows that's going to be future. If you have ideas in AI, ML, and you have good team or the tech teams who can build up a proto or in that area, then you can start with that. Again, few of the areas which, while consulting, I have come across is chatbots. So there is a good response for these chatbots. Particularly, what happens is there are multiple areas which are now, they are going in sync. For example, chatbots and AI. There is a company called Rezo.ai, which is doing conversational AI. So so customer is asking for some questions, and you are developing the insights based on that interaction with the customers. So there is a lot of overlap even between these areas. So for example, there is a company called Off Business. So Off Business is again into providing these industrial products. So they eventually moved towards the fintech side also, and they churned out another company out of it, and both these are unicorns right now. So you may start with one area and eventually the exit maybe through a totally different area, and then that maneuvering itself is a big highlight of the startup world. So drones, e-commerce are also picking up well. So there is a website called Crunchbase. I highly recommend visiting Crunchbase. So Crunchbase will help you understand which areas are upcoming areas. So the same way we see a lot of startups coming in EV, electric vehicles, likewise wearable technology. So out of all these different areas, I have handpicked a few based on my experience of working with them, as well as my understanding of the technology. And then let's deep dive into a few of them. So this is the global market venture funding. So the reason for putting this slide here is you can see US is predominantly they are doing well on this part, the startup. So the venture funding it's too high compared to other nations. So India is also decently ranked compared to the European counterparts. So technically, India is actually after US, China, it's India's number in terms of the number of startups as well as in the startup ecosystem. So the fastest, top 5 fastest growing startup industries or areas, this is by the volume of investment. So if you look at, the investment, that itself is the lifeblood, we will say, for the startup. So without investments, the startup would just simply dry by the basic concept of startup itself. So if you try to run a startup without investment for too long, of course, there are exceptions also to this. The people who have bootstrapped like Zerodha and all, they have done it without even investment. But however, the majority of them, they need investments to move ahead, or otherwise they'll have to burn out. So the top areas in terms of volume of investment, healthcare, and then transportation and the financial services. So fintech is something that you will see quite often. Reason being, fintech in itself, I mean, if you have a decent monetization model, that becomes kind of a key highlighter. So these are some of the areas of startups in terms of innovation. So if you're looking at innovation, they may not be a startup who are getting immediately funded or highly funded, but they are kind of most promising. So the future would be these companies who are into these areas. So for example, if there is a company in AI, AI or autonomous transportation, autonomous cars, as we know, so they would be creating a value at some future date instead of doing it something now. So for example, fintech company, someone like who is there in BNPL or something related to credit cards and all, they may be doing good business now, but for future they'll have to do different kind of work. However, the companies into domains such as AI, they will have a competitive advantage over the other companies in future. This is a list of 100 unicorns of India. This was quite circulated some time back on the social media. These are the startups in all different areas, and then most of them are funded startups. A few of them, as I talked about earlier, are bootstrapped, and very few of them are profitable from start. Like are profitable. Say for example, Nykaa, when it was listed, it was profitable. Whereas for other companies, say Cars24 or Spinny, so they are not profit making from the start, but it is not expected even from the investors that the company should be profit making. Even if they are a unicorn, they may not be profit making. There are big giant companies like Flipkart or Amazon. They are making losses, and then eventually they are expected to make profits. However, if you see, as the startup grows, whoever have invested at the early stages in the company, they will eventually benefit with the next round of funding. So there are people who have even got 100x, 200x kind of returns on their investment. So someone who has invested earlier 1 year might be getting like 200 CR as a return, because the startup grows, and at the same time the industry also grows. So it's going. Many startups, they create totally new market. Say for example, Infra.Market. You might have heard of this company. This is a fast-growing company. In around 18 months of time, they have become 18 to 20 months of time. They have become a unicorn, and it simply depends on how their business model is structured. Say for example, Infra.Market, they were having EBITDA positive, they were having a gross profit margin net positive. So depends on a lot of factors how you plan to monetize, as well as how are your customers going to pay you. So this is a scorecard for the Indian startup funding. So 10.5 billion total deal value. That is just for the quarter one for 2022. A total of 329 deals. So now these deals include even for the early stage startups as well as late stage startups. In Indian market, if you see fintech, SaaS, e-commerce, they are typically the ones which are in focus and EdTech as well. So this gives a summary of the Indian startup ecosystem compared to US, China, and UK. So as we see, we are at par with you. With the European counterparts, a bit better than them. However, the other markets like US and China, they are way ahead in a lot many areas. So the total number of unicorns. So this is actually a bit old data. Now this is already exceeded 100. So, but however, it gives a relative picture of how we are positioned and what are the key areas or the drivers which we should be looking after. So the total number of funded startups, that is around 18,000. The total engineering graduates per year, we are having more than 1.5 million. So the percolation of the internet and the internet users, that is one of the most important factors which has led to the boom in the startup world. So this slide tells us about the funding, the top funding that is received in the different sectors. So let's talk about, say for example, fintech. So fintech, if you compare with others, they are a bit ahead. Say this is again data for Q1 2021. So a lot of these data, some of this data is available in the public domain, whereas if it is not available in public domain, you have to have a paid subscription for sites like Crunchbase and all, where you will easily have this information. However, it is good enough as a relative indicator for which areas are the upcoming areas or the focus areas from an investor's perspective as well as from the market perspective. So which are the areas that we have to focus on. So this is a first quarter 2021. So fintech had 43 deals, whereas edtech and e-commerce had 33 deals together. Likewise, the health tech area and the deep tech, as we again related to AI. So this is also coming up. Eventually, you will see this deep tech area that's also going to move up the ladder. This is the split of the 100 unicorns by sector. So what are the different sectors where the unicorns lie? So in healthcare, we have 9%, that means 9 startups. Okay, 9 startups are in the healthcare area, 13 in the financials, or rather we'll call it as fintech. Okay, then 7 are others. So you see, if you look at e-commerce, e-commerce are, I think it's here, 12. So 12 startups in e-commerce. Sorry, this is IT tech. E-commerce is around 10. So this is a distribution of what areas. When a startup becomes a unicorn, it basically means the valuation of the startup is $1 billion, right? So and it's more driven from an investor perspective than the market perspective. There would be some startups who have who may not have done good from the market perspective. They may not be having good customers or good revenue. However, the investors see that there is a good amount of prospect, and then they would be willing to take a lower share, lower equity, and then invest higher amount. That would lead to making startup a unicorn. So this is more from an investor perspective. So investors see, based on this picture, we can say that 13% is like fintech. So fintech is an area which will give them higher returns, right? And then the same goes with e-commerce as well as the IT and tech. IT and tech and the SaaS are quite related. So SaaS is also 12%. So this is again an upcoming area. So if we see the same slide, if we go deep into and analyze what are the areas and what startups are there in those areas. We're talking about fintech. So fintech, you call it as, say for example, ACO. ACO is a insurance provider, as we know. Bharat Pay is a payment enabler, or CoinSwitch, again, crypto-related company. MobiKwik is again a startup in payment gateways. So there are almost 12 fintech companies in that 100 unicorns list. Likewise, e-commerce, you can say Moglix is there, or Misho, Mamaearth. So Mamaearth is also, like, you can put it in D2C as well as e-commerce. Likewise, Zetwork. Zetwork has brought totally new concept in terms of manufacturing. That's the reason you're seeing only one company in manufacturing. So traditionally, we know in manufacturing, we know the typical manufacturing. So what Zetwork does is they do customized manufacturing for people. It's very interesting concept. So maybe if someone is keen to understand, so it's good to see how Zetwork is disrupting the manufacturing industry. Likewise, we talked about Vedantu, and then Byju's, and then Upgrad. We know how they are disrupting the edtech market. So PropTech or real estate tech, there is again no broker, as we know. So then there is another list of Sunicorns. So that is soon to be unicorns, or so that's also an interesting list. Though they are not unicorns, but they have a great potential to be unicorns. So these are the different sectors in terms of value. So by value, it means in terms of valuation. So earlier, what we had seen were the number of startups in that particular area, or which are the startups which have got higher valuation. So again, this is coming from an investor perspective, not from a market perspective. So 15% fintech, 17%, 17% fintech, 15% healthcare, health tech. So these are the areas where the companies have got higher valuations. Say for example, Moglix it has got $2.6 billion valuation. So if you put that in e-commerce, so that naturally increases the share of this pie in this pie chart. So there may be fewer companies. However, if the valuations are more, that would lead to a higher percentage here. So we see that healthcare as well as financials, fintech, and then this is SaaS. So these companies, they have, they are getting more and more valuations as on date. So rise of startups, how the startup ecosystem has been growing year on year. So you can see there is a continuous growth. So this data is again up to 2019. So there are a couple of years after that, but definitely there has been a good growth. So in fact, 2021, you will see a bigger graph here. The reason being there were more unicorns that have come, and then there is a good there is a good funding also on from the investors' point of view. However, in 2022, in the recent quarter, we have seen there is a dip in terms of the number of startups as well as the funding. The reason is, again, there is a lot of uncertainty that is related to Ukraine war. Likewise, this is a temporary phase, and eventually you will see over years these numbers are going to rise. And with different governments of different countries, particularly India, they're boosting the entire startup ecosystem in multiple ways. So these numbers are bound to rise. So when we are comparing with the conventional, how are the startups put in terms of numbers? So typically, for 100 businesses, you will see like 7 to 10 new firms which are startups. Again, this number is growing. There is a sudden rise in 2015. Again, if you see in 2021, this number might be around 15 types or maybe more. there are multiple reasons why all new firms cannot be startups. Is like, of course, startups come with their own set of risks. Startup comes with deeper understanding of the technology, because it's very rare, or rather, I have not seen any startup which is not backed by technology. So, and technology is comes with again a unique value. So, not everyone can create or handle technology. So that's the reason this remains niche, and then it will continue to remain around this 10 to 15% in terms of the conventional, compared to the conventional business. So this is the number of startups which are, I mean, sorry, in terms of funding amount, which startups have got higher funding, so which areas have got higher funding. So e-commerce, as we saw earlier, e-commerce, fintech, and then consumer services, they are always like, you'll find a bit of reordering there, but there is a good demand for this. And then there is a higher amount of funding that will be put. So the number of startups could be less. However, the amount of funding that goes into these areas, that's more. The reason also could be, say for example, for an e-commerce company, it also requires a great supply chain. So of course, there are other companies like ShipRocket where you can take where you can leverage on their supply chain. However, eventually startups will have to develop their own efficient supply chains. Whereas in terms of say D2C or EdTech, they don't need to have that level of interaction with the supply chain. EdTech, for example, if you develop a decent, good product and you market well, you're ready to go. So that's the reason you see a lot of online coaching. They have evolved into now startups, and then that sector is again booming. This is one of the, I mean, this is coming from the recent deals and fundings. So you can see this is like for last 2 quarters. So a total of say here it shows the total how many deals have happened. This orange bar shows how many deals have happened in that sector. So fintech had maximum number of deals, as well as they had maximum number of funding as well. So this is around coming around 3,000 CR. So followed by SaaS. So this is now specific to the India market. Earlier, a few slides that we had seen, there were a mix of India as well as the global market. So SaaS is booming. So SaaS is having close to like 90 deals overall, and it ranks like around number 2 in terms of the overall funding that they have received. Here, as you can see, the other quick areas which are coming are D2C, health tech. Health tech could be some apps like Procto is there, right? So it is a health tech. EdTech, as you can see here, this has got a lesser number of deals, however, more amount of funding, right? And then there are other areas like food tech. The number of startups are less, however, the amount of funding is more. This could also be investors are now. I mean, they have specific areas. So, an investor in one area will not look out for the investments in other. One example could be an investor is from EdTech, and then there is a startup which is approaching him. Maybe they are from a gaming world, so they may not invest in a gaming startup. Despite having a great value proposition, they would stay away because of their understanding of that area itself. So, yeah. Other angle that we should also keep in mind while selecting the areas for startup is how is the government's focus. The government of India, if you see websites like Startup India, you will see they have a clear defined identified areas where they want the new companies to focus on. because this is again a strategically driven decision that's going to help the nation overall. So this is providing another third angle apart from the market and the investors and the customers. So what are the areas that they want new startups to come in? Defense is again predominant because our dependence on say other countries for defense equipment. So if there is a certain startup which is doing say drones for defense, then government they have their different grants, and it's easily, I mean, it's possible, it's quite possible that people get such grants and the support that is required from the government at an early stage. So let's understand how, I mean, from a market perspective, what are the things that we need to look at. So we are talking about market. So market is nothing but we can say a set of customers, right? So market in terms of market size, we have talked about earlier. What is the TAM, the total addressable market? What is the SOM, that is the service obtainable market? How big the startup can be when it grows at a faster rate. So that will be driven by the market size. The market segments, so different segments, there would be a market in EdTech. So there is a K-12 market segment, or there is someone who is looking for upskilling, so that becomes a market segment. Likewise, your competitors, how are you pitched against the competition? So a proper analysis of this needs to be done whenever you are opting or choosing for area to work on. Or at times there would be startups who have created a totally new market for themselves. Airbnb is a good example of that. So when Airbnb existed, look at the idea that they pitched. We are going to rent your home. So that might have looked a bit absurd at the time. However, eventually as they developed as a company, as a startup, it was considered to be one of the most innovative ideas. But if you look at it from a layman's perspective, you have a spare space, a spare house, spare room. You can just rent it out to people. Likewise, I mean, there are companies, Intel, for example, they have an immense monopoly in terms of in the computer market. So they have created this new market with an exponential curve, we can say. Shopify, we know it has grown to such a big size. They help build customers, custom websites on their portal. So WeWork, though the story of the CEO of the WeWork wasn't really great. However, as an idea, if you have an office, spare space in your office, you can rent it out as a co-working space. Then that itself worked wonders for them, and then they earned billions out of it. So market size, we talked about this. So let's now deep dive into some of these areas, like we talked particularly about EdTech, FinTech, SaaS. So deep dive into these areas and understand what's really happening, what are the different segments, and what are the different startups in these areas. So EdTech landscape, if we see, starting from the newly going kid to the school, up to someone who is looking for a job or upskilling, there is a huge spectrum in which these startups are spread. So be it immersive technology, you have to learn new things, right? Early childhood learning. So
बस इथे लॅब मध्ये का कुठल्या क्लासरूम मध्ये बस.
So if you see these areas,
okay.
So for example, coding, Whitehead Junior is a great example. So they have come up with coding for kids. So So
Okay.
now there are multiple areas which can be overlapped, and a new market can be created for in a different way altogether. So STEM, um, science, technology, and then mathematics. So that is upcoming area. Language learning. There are many startups which are coming for enabling the way you learn languages. DO is a good example. That company is now immensely valued. So coming back to the Indian scenario, so how is the Indian market map? So let's have a detailed look at the different areas. For example, school digitization. There are, I mean, in the school there are different documents that are handled day in day out. So report card, for example, report B helps in managing those report cards. Or there would be a startup in terms of this Byju's. We all know what they do. So they are all into like Byju's, Vedantu. They are into tutoring for K-12. Other startup is like Upgrad, is a known name. So they help in upskilling from a job perspective. Simply Learn simplifies the overall learning experience. Likewise, you might have also heard of Imbibe. So Imbibe is a Reliance company. So they are into the test preparation. They help, like Topper, they help into the testing, the test preparation for examinations. So you can gamify the entire experience in the tech world, and then you can also have a subdomain under the ed tech, and then we will call it as. Then there will be a few startups coming in that area. So as we see here, there is a confluence of many things. So mixing of different areas so that a new idea can be developed. So this is again a different kind of segmentation. So we talked about Vedanta, we talked about Byju's. In terms of finance also, there are a few startups which are focused on providing financial assistance for education. So there are startups in this domain, or apps and games for kids. There is there's a good startup. I just forgot the name, but there is a startup even in this area which is quite promising. Test Prep, Topper, Testbook, or Class Plus. So from a customer's perspective, if you see, there are whether your customer is a business itself or whether it is a consumer. So based on that, a segregation can be made. Say, for example, your customer is a school. Okay, so if your customer is school, and then you are a startup called as Educom Smart Class, this is a B2B business where you will approach the schools and provide smart class in terms of smart what do you call blackboards, right? Or things of that kind, which will help the schools. So this becomes a B2B edtech company. Likewise, say B2C, for example, Whitehead Junior. So you're a business, and then you're catering to the needs of the preschool to K-12, the primary and the secondary schools. So you become Whitehead Junior, and you help them coding. So if you're catering to the needs of again B2B test preparation, it's Class Plus. So this positioning is very important, even when you're choosing the areas, which areas to work on. So how are you going to position yourself once the area is decided? So you want to work in edtech. So are you going to, I mean, who is your customer? Who is going to pay for this? Whether it is schools, whether it is school management, or whether it is government in some cases, or whether it is the students that who are going to pay you. So depending on that, whether it is B2B or B2C, or again B2B to B2C, B2B to C. So basically, what it means is you're dealing with the business directly. However, the end payment will be done by the consumers. Like in case of schools, so there are many robotic startups coming up where schools enable these companies to work within their premises, and then the ultimate payment is done by the kids, students. So that way. So there's another concept called as aggregator and marketplaces. So basically, you might have heard of Amazon as well as Oyo. So what Amazon does is it brings different sellers on their platform, and then as the name suggests, they're a marketplace, and they allow different sellers to use their platform and then sell their products. So aggregators do other way around. Say for example, Oyo, they have different hotels, so they'll aggregate or combine all those hotels into one place, and then they themselves will sell their hotels as their own, and then hotel rooms rather, and then they'll sell their hotel rooms on need basis, and at the same time generating business for the existing hotels as well as creating value for themselves. So coming back to the edtech space, so now you can identify there are a few areas which do not have many startups, right? So of course there could be reasons for that. So once we dig a deep dive into these areas, we can easily identify why there are not many companies or areas into this. But it also provides an opportunity that the competition will be less. But there should be a solid reason why we are choosing a selective, a particular area, and we are not. We are eliminating the other options. So Coursera, we heard of Coursera. They provide training. Coursera, Udemy. They help in developing new skills and providing some great learning opportunity there. We talked about Vedantu earlier. This slide shows us our journey. Vedantu's journey, how they started and where they are. This is just to give you a feel of a typical journey of a startup from the seed stage or the early stage towards being unicorn or whatever the current status is right now. So they started in May 2015, and then they raised initial capital of 37 CR. So even before this, there might have been a early stage, so where they have, we can call it as a pre-seed stage, or where they have developed the idea, and then they went to the market and established the product, and then they went on to the investors, so like typical known investors, Accel or Tiger Global. So this is how the starting was. Eventually, once you have these 37 CR in your account, and then you have proposed to your investors that you are going to create so and so startup, and then this is your projected or the milestone plan, and then the investors buy into your pitch, and then they give you 37 CR. So you utilize that to develop, mostly in terms of say if it is a edtech, a lot of that money goes into developing the product itself. So developing the software for that, as well as capturing the initial customers, going to the market, and then getting customers, onboarding customers, as well as the operational costs and whatnot. So in 3 years, they raised another set of like 81 CR. Again, some of the investors remain, whereas as you see, the Tiger Global is not here. So Tiger Global might have exited from here, so quite possible. And then after that, there are quick rounds of funding. So this long period is quite possible because of the development of the product. So that takes time. Once your product is ready, you can go to market and hire more sales guys, and then you can ramp up very quickly. So after these, you can see the fundings have been like quite quicker. They did the Series C with 311 CR, and then if you see, the numbers might be quite increasing or of a higher magnitude. So 51 CR here in Series C. So Series C means this was a continued round, same round. again in September they came up with like 742 CR. So this is what made them the unicorn. So eventually, if you see so much of money that is coming into the startup, so and it's very much vital for them to spend this money, because it's given by the investors to grow. So then you may see pictures like this. So you have so much of cash with you, and you have to go and capture market. So despite having like lesser revenue, you're still focused on marketing everywhere on the television and all. You see just Vedantu. So this is now the another perspective that I wanted to showcase at the start. So now it sounds more reasonable that with so much of cash provided by the investors, it's easy to burn and acquire more and more customers. So switching from edtech to fintech, how the companies are what are the different sub-segments in the fintech category. These are the 250 fintech startups. This data is coming from CB Insights. CB Insights is again a very good insights company which provides data related to the startups. Some of this data is available in public domain, whereas again some of it you have to buy. So the different fintech segments, accounts and finance. So accounts and finance, you might have heard of a company like Zenoti. So Zenoti is there, or personal finance, which is like close to us. So personal finance is there. So real estate, this is again an amalgamation of real estate, prop tech as well as fintech. So someone who is having focus on two different segments can create a company in this area. Likewise, again, some known names I'm just trying to look out. Cryptocurrency, for all the good or bad reasons they are in the news. Again, the government, fintech is something which is highly regulated by the government. Say recently, the government, RBI in particular, they brought new regulation for this BNPL, that is buy now pay later. So there are many companies which are coming in this area, buy now pay later. However, because of this regulation, it has created a kind of a stop, because it also leads to some fraudster companies coming in this area, and then there are many violations of FEMA or say these kind of regulations. So it's very much important to also have a watch or a look on what areas. I mean, if you're choosing fintech as an area for your startup, so there could be some legal angles or the regulatory angle. So that also is important and a vital part. So this is the fintech landscape for from an Indian perspective. So as you see, in 2007, there were certain companies that we heard of, like Apna Paisa was there, 5 Paisa and Apna Paisa were there around that time. And then Policy Bazaar started in 2008. Actually, around 2010, this area like Zerodha and then Paytm, these were the key highlighting companies which came around that time. And because of the big name or massive marketing campaign, it became as a gateway for another companies, for many companies. And again, when demonetization happened, these companies came into limelight all of a sudden, and then that also caused a great boom for the fintech sector. So as you can see here, the different subsectors, again, more or less they are similar, B2B. So if you are a fintech company and you are dealing with other businesses, you are a B2B fintech company. Pine Labs, for example, wherever you go, say for a you go to a medical store and you want to pay for something, you'll see a small device and Pine Lab is written. So this company makes that devices and enables the payment. same way P2P lending, that is peer-to-peer lending. So there are again many companies coming in this area. So when someone, I mean, that's lending can happen from one person to another person. SME lending. So recently there was a company of business. So they have many these things, like they have SME companies listed with them. So they leverage that data to provide loans to them. So if you have a customer base, use that customer base to create another company. That is exactly what our business did. Or lending marketplace, Policy Bazaar. Policy Bazaar, I mean, despite being old company and then the first mover in this category, they are kind of insurance, and I would also put them somewhere here, marketplace, where different suppliers of the insurances, they come at one place, and then the Policy Bazaar as a company, they enable that transaction to happen. So after demonetization, many companies, Google Pay or Cred, recently Cred is a big story. So Cred, what Cred does is it helps, I mean, whoever is paying their credit card bills on time, it incentivizes them by giving points and money. So this is a landscape of the Indian fintech system. These are the similar startups, but then they have been put under like different buckets here. So as you see, for personal finance, you see Clear Tax is there, which helps in taxation, or insurance. So we have heard of CoverFox or ACO. They also help in insurance. So the concept is simple. Once you arrive at area, say you're chosen fintech to work on. So what exactly is the other subsector that you're looking at? Or if you already have a customer base, in which particular area do you have consumers with you, say a database of consumers who would want to buy your fintech idea, or you are close to say other companies, see, then you can opt for a B2B model. Lending Card is a company which helps startups. I mean, it provides loan to startups without any collateral. Likewise, there is a company called Velocity. It also helps companies to take loan without collateral, and then they can pay their EMIs without, I mean, based on whatever revenue that they are making in that month. In a particular month, if you are making lower revenue, you can pay lower EMI. So these are basically small tweaks to the entire value chain, and these little disruptions, them in themselves, can become a new company. So moving to e-commerce. So in e-commerce, what drives, there are two different segments in e-commerce, B2B and B2C. So mostly what people know is B2C. So where companies like Amazon, Flipkart, so where the end consumer pays for, right? So B2B, for B2C, traffic is the most important part. Traffic in terms of millions, how many people or how many users, consumers are visiting you. So this is a bit old data. However, it shows clearly that Flipkart was a leader at one time. Then Myntra, Jabong, and Snapdeal were also there. Now Amazon is quite up the ladder. However, the point here is what is driving more and more traffic. What is your DAU, that is daily active users? What is MAU, monthly active users? So that determines the success of the e-commerce companies. And how much time is spent by the visitors on your site. That's again, so in this again, Amazon and then Flipkart are leading. So people spend more time on your website as well as on particular pages. So page views is again a key point here. So how many pages are viewed? So that is then the sources of traffic. So where are the people coming from? So are they coming from social media? Are they coming from SEO, or are they coming from any other affiliate program? So that uh, uh, shows the strength of your startup and how it is positioned to grow. And in particular sense, if you have particularly say you're not doing good on the SEO part, you can focus on that particular areas and grow in that area. Now, talking a bit about industryrider.com, since we are on the e-commerce, so we are basically B2B e-commerce portal, and then the problem that we are trying to solve is companies have to deal with multiple vendors. When they're dealing with multiple vendors, they have multiple issues. So right from getting certain stuff, say for example, if I need a single spanner, so getting that spanner, I have to approach multiple suppliers, and then they will give the quotations, and then it's a hectic process. So here, what we are trying to do is aggregate these suppliers at one place and help the companies in reduce their delay times, as well as the entire the time to procure. So helping companies maintain multiple records, and then it's making the life of the procurement manager easy. So these are the different value offerings of Industry Rider. We are like a single channel for procurement, vendor consolidation, and then when people buy through us, they also get the GST benefit. And then overall, there is a smooth integration of the purchase requirement to the material receipt process, and then everything is online, and then they can track in real time. Of course, there are other companies in this domain, but then we have a bit of differentiation compared to them. This is our portal. You may visit, and like if you want to book something, you can do that as well. So the highlights clearly, I mean, we have a customer friendly interface, and then the typical e-commerce, like you have a secured payment gateway, and then you can add items to your cart and then compare, buy, those things are there. So that was a quick overview of what we are doing at Industry Rider. Coming back to another segment. So actually I have captured a few more sectors. So I'll quickly try to wrap up. I understand it's 12 o'clock, and then I have to finish in like next 10-15 minutes. So I'll just quickly capture a few areas, and then I have important topic on funding. So that also I want to cover a bit. So let me deep dive into healthcare. So healthcare, we keep on hearing about different startups like Procto is there, or recently CultFit is one of them, or PharmEasy or NetMeds. So again, there are different areas, whether you're choosing to opt for fitness and wellness, or you want to use AI to develop some solution for the customers, or you're going to focus on the personal health. So depending on your personal interest, as well as your know-how of of the areas, as well as your understanding of the competition, how the market is positioned, you may opt for any of these areas, and then that could be the starting point. Of course, eventually things may not remain the same. In case you're starting with say fitness, so things will change in a different direction, and that's quite obvious. In the startup terms, it's called as a pivot. So you start with one area or one domain, and then eventually you totally change your path, and that's okay. So HealthPlix is one of the good companies I know of in this domain. D2C, because of the current TV show Shark Tank, this term has become quite popular. So D2C is like direct to consumer. You develop your own product, and then you market the product directly to the consumer. Say Sugar Cosmetics or Boat. These are prominent names in this sector, or Mama or Paperfry. As we know, we can get furniture from them. So what they do is they have their own products, and then they ship directly to the customer. So cutting everything in between. So this is direct to consumers. So the markets for these are also quite good. Say, for example, food and beverage. It is $1 trillion market is there for food and beverage. So you might have heard of Country Delight. So this started as delivering milk, just milk, and then I guess they are a unicorn or just near unicorn status. So this is a big name in this. So likewise, Boat and Noise, they provide electronic gadgets like earphones as well as smartwatches. So this is again a big industry. So if you're choosing to go for D2C as the area of your startup, again, you have to identify which particular areas, what is your product, how is your product different from others, and who are you competing against. Say, for example, cosmetics. So for cosmetics, there were already earlier names, Lakme and all, they were there. But then Sugar Cosmetic, it came and it captured a particular area. So here it is important that to identify who your customers are going to be and what they want particularly. So finding that gap and placing yourself in that gap to make a position for yourself is very much crucial in the D2C market. So as you can see, the D2C rush, there are around 800 startups. Of course, don't get bogged down by the number of startups in that area. So the numbers will always rise. So what value you're creating and how you're conveying it to your consumers, market and the investors, that is more important. So investors will always show interest provided you have a great potential. So do not get bogged down by already if there are 800 startups. So that's just another number. Many of them will not grow or will grow into some another segment. That's quite obvious. And then some of the prominent names in this sector are Lenskart. Sequoia Capital is an active investor in this D2C segment. Sales Tech. So you might have heard of different CRM tools like Bitrix is there, Base is there, or there are some tools like Freshdesk, Zoho. So these tools, they help the customers in managing their entire sales process. So right from getting the leads up to acquiring the customers. So in everything in between they take care of, and then they make the entire customer experience great. So it helps in managing the customer data as well as how the customers contact you and how you respond to the customers. So entire all these gamut is rather value is created by these companies in this domain. So typically, the sub segments would be intelligence and analytics that you can provide. This is more software driven, so you need to develop a good software tool for customers to buy, right? And then you can opt for different models. You can go for a freemium model as well as you can go for a subscription-based model, or you can choose. There are multiple models out there. So depending on that and which particular area you want to work on, you can select that, and then you can create a difference here. AI, as we know, AI is one of the promising areas. Again, in AI, there are companies like Wyzen. So Wyzen is a Singapore-based company, which it's a Singapore-based company which helps people. It analyzes images, and that images are then transformed into data for decision making for the customers to make a purchase. So likewise, this is there's another company called Rezo.ai. I was talking about conversational e-commerce, conversational commerce. So this is more like a chatbot where you ask questions to a chatbot, and then the learnings of these queries or the answers develop a greater experience for the customers. IoT. So in IoT, let's keep this part. So IoT has got different again sub-segments: wearables, retail, and then healthcare. So depending on like what your interests are, you can opt for which sub area you have to go for. So depending on the technology that you can create, say for example, many electronics engineers would be sitting amongst us. So if you can develop a product which can cater to the needs of say a customer and provide them certain data which is not provided by say a boat or noise, and then you can create some decent variable, then that itself would be a great innovation. Right. So you can identify those areas, sub areas, and then see how you are positioned or what other companies are doing in that area, and how you can tweak the value chain and create a disruption. I'll skip the ESG part a bit, given that we are short on time. But this is again one area where a lot of focus is happening these days. The reason being there is a good focus on the climate change, and for that reason, many startups are coming, which are say like there's absorption of the carbon dioxide from air or things of that kind. That is immense focus on this area from the government as well as many private sector companies. So this is also a good way to think about this area. SaaS, as we discussed earlier, this is one of the fastest growing sector. As you can see in 2020 to 25, it is growing at a CAGR of 30%. So in terms of industry, this is well beyond average. Eventually, you'll see more and more SaaS companies coming together, and creating a market for themselves. So there has been a steep increase in the funding or the investment in Indian SaaS startups. Industrial robotics, so these are the different areas we talked about. One of the key highlighting things about industrial robotics is in India, India is a lot behind compared to others, like South Korea, where they have 631 robots against 10,000 workers, whereas India has got just 3. So that gives us an opportunity for creating a market here. So robots and cobots, just keep this part as well. So this goes here, as you can see, the number of robots that are purchased every year, that's increasing, and there is a lot of focus on manufacturing in India as well. So that gives us, that there will be a good amount of need for the robotics engineers and people with robotics expertise. So we conduct some seminars on career opportunities in industrial robotics. Dinesh is a good friend of mine and a classmate from IIT Delhi. He has a company which does trainings in industrial robotics. I also consult him and advise him on in the company. So it's listed. So we have such career opportunities related to robotics. So maybe if anyone of you is interested, I will share a link for the upcoming industrial robotics webinar to ma'am. There is another a few slides on startup funding, but maybe I'll keep it for next since we are short on time. So how startup funding works and all. Maybe if you're keen on this, you can just Google out. Right, so that's fine. So elements of a pitch deck. What are the things that are what the investors look at whenever you are selecting an area pitching to the customer, so that you can see here. The most important of them are team, and then the potential, and then the plan, the business plan, traction. So these are a few things. We do startup mentoring as well in a lot of areas, as discussed earlier, like SWOT analysis, business innovation, pitch deck preparation, business, say, break even. So these are some of the things. If you want, you can approach and feel. You can reach out on any time. So I hope I'm just in time and I have delivered some value to you in this short duration of time. And actually, I had a few extra slides, and that took, I think, some more time. But over to you. Thank you, and I'm open to questions if you have any.
Do you have any questions, students or participants? Participants, I request you, if you have any questions, you can ask to the star.
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so okay. Okay, thank you, sir. You guided us on various topics such as what makes startup success, time, team, and execution ideas, key elements for success, what do you mean by minimum valuable products, how to choose area of work for startups, top unicorn sectors, top funded areas, about Vedanta, AI, and more things. So with this, I assure you, sir, that the students and budding entrepreneurs will definitely follow the path and advice given by you. And with the help of such inspiring lectures, our country will definitely lead in startups. I will express my sincere thanks to Nitin Katke sir for accepting our invitation and guiding the participants. I will also thankful to our management, campus director, vice principal sir, principal sirs, double IC chairman, and ICC coordinators for their support and efforts. I mention my thanks to all participants for patiently listening. Thank you, one and all. Now, the first session of this Impact Lecture series is over. Let's meet at 1 p.m. for the second lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.